In this video, I am going to discuss about function notation. As usual, whenever I get a chance, I try to remind my students about the definition of function. Here it is again. Consider two sets A, B, and C, one set, D, E, and F, another set. A function is a mapping between two sets, where each item in the first set is mapped to only one item in the second. As you can see, I am mapping A to E, B to D, and C to F. Once again, the rule is that function is a mapping between two sets where each item in the first set is mapped to only one item in the second. And the first set, by the way, we call it domain, and the second set we call it range. And the notation for function, standard notation for function, is that y is equal to f of x. Okay? This says that you are dealing with a function where the function takes x, a value from the first set, and gives you a value y in the second set. The first value x is coming from the domain, and the second value y is coming from the range. This notation also says that we are dealing with a function where the y variable depends on the variable x. So we call x the independent variable and y the dependent variable. So keep it in mind, x is the independent variable and y is the dependent variable. Once again, let me write it freshly here. Y is equal to f of x. Okay, so this is the standard notation. Please do not think of this as f times x. Okay, it is read f of x. What it says that this is a function where x is the independent variable, y is the dependent variable. Y is the value that depends on the value x. Okay, x comes from domain and y comes from range. Once again, this is not f times x. It says it's a function that depends on the variable x. Again, it's a function, it depends on the variable x. Now here is another bit of notation. I could have said that y is equal to f of x t, x comma t. What this is saying is that we are dealing with a function where the function depends on the independent variables x and t. So y is the dependent variable still, but it depends on the values of x and t, or on the variables x and t, which are independent variables. Keep that in mind. We could use whatever notation we want. Z is equal to f of x w t. Doesn't matter. This says z is a function that depends on the independent variables x, w, and t, and as a function argument. So these are the arguments of independent variables. You could have as many independent variables as you want, and you will have one output or one dependent variable. Just a quick reminder, function could be thought of as input and output as well. You give it an input and it gives you only one output. Remember, each input will give you only one output. Okay, so that's very important. Like each item in the first set maps to only one item in the second. Set of all these inputs is domain, and set of all these outputs is range. Okay, now one thing we do is this function, sometimes we write it like this. It's a mapping between domain and range, f of x, right? You take an x value from D, it goes into the function, it gives you a y value in the range, and we will denote a function by y is equal to f of x. So let me summarize what I talked about. I talked about function definition, of course. Then most importantly in this video, we talked about function notation. How do we represent a function? By writing y is equal to f of x. Okay, where x is the independent variable and y is the dependent variable. Okay, remember this notation, y is equal to f of x. It says that we are dealing with a function that depends on the variable x, and f of x is typically represented by y, but you could use other symbols to z, w, whatever you want. It's your preference. Okay, I hope that this discussion was helpful. Thank you very much.